Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this special Earth Day celebration in the Commonwealth. I am Jason Bullock, Director of the Virginia Natural Heritage Program, a division of the Department of Conservation and Recreation, with a mission and a charge by the Code of Virginia to conserve Virginia's biodiversity. Virginia Natural Heritage is also a part of a network of 80 natural heritage programs and organizations led by the conservation nonprofit NatureServe. And this network spans the U.S., Canadian provinces, Native American Indian reservations, and Central and South American countries. We use a shared approach to doing conservation based on the most robust and up-to-date information to ensure that limited resources are focused on conserving lands and waters of greatest conservation importance. Biodiversity is the variety of living things in a habitat, in a place, from small tracts to regions to the world. Each of those living things has a role, has a job it does, interconnected with the roles of the others. When the native biodiversity in a place is intact, then the free services like clean air and water, wildlife habitat, aesthetics, spiritual enrichment, cultural heritage, recreation, and tourism are all available for everyone. Biodiversity intact and functioning is the underpinning of these services. The Virginia Natural Heritage Program works every day to conserve Virginia's biodiversity through inventory of our unique natural communities and rare plant and animal species that live in them. We use this data and information to identify and map conservation priorities and share this information with our partners. We work to permanently conserve the best examples of Virginia's biodiversity as Virginia Natural Area Preserves. Today, there are 65 preserves covering more than 59,000 acres. Every one harbors rich biodiversity, our natural heritage resources, and our natural area stewards work to manage, restore, and enhance that biodiversity. The importance of DCR's natural area preserves and state parks and all conservation lands for human health and well-being has perhaps never been greater. We have seen record-breaking visitation and unprecedented need for public lands during the pandemic. Today, we're standing in the center of an amazing landscape, the perfect place for us all to learn something great. And I hope today is a reminder to us all that we also have our roles, our jobs to do every day to ensure that the Commonwealth is a rich and beautiful place to live in and to visit. Thank you all for being here today. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Mr. Chris Ludwig, retired chief biologist from DCR's Natural Heritage Program.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Have to make this a little lower. How's that? On June 25th, 1972, Dr. Alton Harville, Longwood College botany professor, and his wife Barbara collected plants along Allens Mills Road, a bit over 3 miles north of where we sit today. The species he found were among the rarest known in Virginia. I came across these specimens at Longwood in March of 1989 when I was botanist for the Virginia Natural Heritage Program within DCR. I was collecting information on Virginia's rare plants for the Natural Heritage Biodiversity Data System. It took me a few years to get to the site where Harville had found these plants, and many acres had been converted to industrial loblolly pine stands. Fortunately, the native flora survived the conversion. Before I could even get out of my car, I found two of the rarest plants, American ipecac and Carolina thistle. They're only known sites in Virginia at the time. The site was named for nearby Difficult Creek, and since then, natural heritage biologists have uncovered a fantastic and diverse flora. We have records for 14 rare plants at the site. These include one of 2 extant sites in the world for tall barber's buttons, Marshallia legrandii, named and identified from Difficult Creek by Dr. Alan Weekly, who is in attendance and somewhere, and I can't point him out. There he is. Hi, Alan. Who found that or identified that from Difficult Creek. Additionally, The preserve has a hefty population of the federally endangered smooth coneflower. Finally, along with Richard LeBlond and Johnny Townsend, I discovered and described a species of panic grass known nowhere else in the world. The species is named, fittingly, Harville's witchgrass. Dicanthelium harvillei is its scientific name. Well, concurrent to these events, Virginians were blessed when in 1989 we passed the Virginia Natural Area Preserves Act, codifying a biodiversity inventory conducted by our Natural Heritage Program at DCR that Jason just talked about. Paired in the legislation was the codification of the Virginia Natural Area Preserve System, which Jason also just mentioned, with an extremely vigorous deed of dedication conservation instrument. Well, the 14 rare plants at Difficult Creek, you guessed it, they are now contained within the Difficult Creek Natural Area Preserve, which spans 819 acres. I began my talk at Difficult Creek because those 819 acres terminate along McDonald Road, directly across from the Falkland property where we are today. Well, why all the rare plants at Difficult Creek? Geology. Virgilina greenstone underlies Difficult Creek, and this geology forms well-developed hard pan soils, also simply referred to as hard pan. It's nice and breezy today, isn't it? Hard pans have near impermeable soils that keep water close to the surface during rainy periods, usually annually in winter and spring, and then dry to a hard brick, particularly in drier summers. It is the vast hard pan soils, wrong page. Well, grasslands flourish over hard pan, but forests less so, since the rare plants at Difficult Creek are herbaceous species of grasslands. The hard pan soils provide the habitat. In a few moments, I will talk about another essential factor for these species to not only survive but thrive. But for the moment, back to the geology. If you look at a geologic map of this area, the bands of rock types run northeast to southwest. What is southwest of the Virgilina greenstone of Difficult Creek? Greenstone at Falkland Farms. In fact, Falkland Farms contains thousands of acres of hard pan soils underlain by Virgilina greenstone and certain phases of another geologic type known as Aran slate. It is the vast hard pan soils of Falkland Farms that help make it an incredibly important site in terms of biodiversity conservation here in the Virginia Piedmont. Thousands of acres. So when in 2019 Falkland Farms came up for sale, the Department of Conservation and Recreation mobilized, ultimately resulting in the conservation outcome we are celebrating on this fine Earth Day, this fine and windy Earth Day. In late 2019, Alan Weekly, Julie Tuttle, and I were asked to conduct a quick inventory and develop an initial set of management recommendations. Our simple question: what do we do in order to restore this site to its pre-colonial condition, say 500 years before present? To do this, we assessed the current vegetation and compared it with the vegetation structure thought to have existed prior to European colonization in North America. Our findings, based on the geology, soils, historical accounts, and phytogeographic patterns, all evidence suggests that Falkland Farms contained a very extensive open vegetation structure with grasslands and savanna 500 years ago. Grassland, savanna, and open woodland vegetation, relatively scarce here now, covered much of the site, particularly over the hard pans, but also to some extent over the flatter terrain of the track. The river bottom, steeper slopes, and ravines were the only areas that were densely forested. Though relatively little is needed to restore the forest of Falkland, restoring the site's grasslands and savannas will take a lifetime. But perhaps more than anywhere else in the Commonwealth, this restoration is achievable. Earlier, I referred to a factor in addition to hard pan that will allow the grasslands to not only survive, but thrive. That factor is natural disturbance, which was commonplace 500 years ago. Specifically, disturbance from large herbivores, such as bison, but especially fire. Fire is an ecological driver that was common, set both by lightning strikes and Native Americans for millennia previous to colonization. Ecologists believe that this region of the Virginia Piedmont had a pre-colonial fire return frequency of anywhere between 4 and 10 years. Grasslands and fires go hand in hand. So our first restoration recommendation was to use extensive and frequent fire to enhance the conditions for the grassland plants. This is already heavily employed at adjacent Difficult Creek Natural Area Preserve and Stanton River State Park, and the positive results have been dramatic. Paired with fire, extensive basal area reduction of trees in the uplands is recommended, including elimination of all loblolly pine, a species absent from this region during pre-colonial times. Well, why cut trees? Well, fire is not enough. Once forests are established in a fire-suppressed landscape, it is rarely possible to restore grassland conditions without silvicultural management. Our third restoration recommendation was to control non-native invasive plant species, which are relatively uncommon still over some portions of Falkland Farms. Our final recommendation was employment of the Virginia Natural Heritage Program to conduct rare species and invasive species inventory, as well as gathering vegetation data preceding active management to make sure we keep on track. I'm happy that the Virginia Natural Heritage was charged to do just that. We now have records for 6 rare plant species at Falkland. The population of most of these are small, but extensive populations are expected when management is conducted. Well, there's so much more I could share, but time is short. I must comment that the fact that Falkland is centered among tens of thousands of acres of state and federal lands is a blessing. Difficult Creek Natural Area Preserve, Stanton River State Park, numerous wildlife management areas, and extensive holdings of federal land surrounding Carr Reservoir form a matrix of managed natural lands. Resilience and restoration effectiveness is greatly enhanced when embedded within a larger conserved landscape. Also, I wish I had time to tell you about the mottled dusky-winged butterfly. This grassland butterfly is arguably the rarest butterfly in Virginia. Ann Chazal, where's Ann? I told her I would point her out, discovered that butterfly at Difficult Creek. And by God, we will find it at Falkland Farms, at least after we build it, meaning restore it. The mottled dusky wing will come. Well, in my mind's eye, I imagine the Falkland Farms of 500 years ago. Rolling hills covered in grasslands, grazing herds of bison, deer, and elk, forested valleys, and a diverse flora and fauna. In my mind's eye, I also imagine a Falkland Farms of tomorrow, restored as best we can to its past glory, once again with grasslands and a diverse and resilient native flora and fauna. Alas, it is unlikely I will live long enough to see it quite as beautifully as restored as I can imagine, because I have quite an imagination. But I sincerely believe that as the Commonwealth brings to bear the needed fire, silviculture, and invasive species control, we are on our way. The theme for Earth Day 2021 is Restore the Earth. What better place could we be to celebrate this wonderful day? And now I'd like to introduce our Director of Virginia's wonderful state park system, Dr. Melissa Baker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Aldo Leopold once said that land as community is the basic concept of ecology, but that land is to be loved and respected as an extension of ethics, and that land yields a cultural harvest is a fact long known, but often forgotten. The mission of Virginia State Parks is to conserve the natural, scenic, historic, and cultural resources of the Commonwealth of Virginia and to provide recreational and educational opportunities consistent with good stewardship of these lands, waters, and facilities that leaves them unimpaired for future generations. I like to believe that state parks are stewards of what Aldo Leopold called the cultural harvest of the land. Our work in conserving and connecting people to these resources is part of creating a spirit of appreciation and a sense of place with these special places. And as people interact with these places, they create and receive a host of benefits, including the fact that parks support community identity. Since parks are created on what is unique and special about a place where they are founded, they become the key places for people to gather and share and learn about the attributes that are core to a community's identity. Additionally, parks support local economies. A 2020 study of the economic impact of Virginia state parks conducted by Virginia Tech estimated that visitors to Virginia state parks spent over $278 million a year associated with their state park visits, and 41% of this spending was from out-of-state visitors, meaning that when people come to the parks in your communities, they're supporting schools, they're supporting local businesses, they're supporting backpacks and braces and all the things that make our communities run. But in addition to economic support, parks support families. Outdoor recreation provides exceptional opportunities for family bonding. On any given Sunday, if you go to a park, you'll find families gathered under picnic shelters and in recreation areas where the lifelong bonds of generations of grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins are fed and strengthened. But it's not only the annual family reunion that is strengthened with families and parks. Recently, I was visiting a state park and walking along one of the trails, and I was reflecting on the number of individual families that passed me. Moms and dads and kids of all ages on bikes and on foot, spending days together and making memories. In addition to supporting families, parks support public health. In fact, the role of parks and public lands in providing for public health perhaps has been never so important as it has been over the past year. Whether engaged in passive or active recreation, the availability of parks and public lands has helped people stay healthy this year. People of all abilities were able to be physically active in parks, from walking paths to hiking and biking trails, to water activities and swimming and paddling. Parks provide opportunities for people to engage in activities that promote physical health. But it's not just physical health, it's also mental health. When you visit a park, you have an opportunity to slow down, to connect with nature, to spend time with family, and to put away the cares and the stresses of the day, and to connect with something greater than yourself. And that is incredibly beneficial for mental health. On Earth Day, I think it's also important that we recognize that parks support conservation. Parks help people connect with nature. For most of us, the ability to connect with large landscapes, to immerse ourselves in the natural world, requires public land. That's the beauty of parks and public lands, is that they belong to all citizens of the Commonwealth. Access to nature is not something that is reserved for only those with privilege, but is in fact the birthright of all Virginians through their parks and public lands. And through that access to public lands and the educational and recreational experiences on those lands, people find a love of nature and a sense of place. So it seems appropriate on this Earth Day that we reflect on the importance of parks and public lands in the development of a conservation ethic. For it's through those connections with the natural world that people come to care for it just as it is cared for them. And so I leave you with this quote from John Muir. Everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to the body and soul alike. And with that, I'd like to introduce the Director of the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, Clyde Chrisman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baker, Governor Northam, Secretary Strickler, all of our guests today. It's great to see you, and also all of our guests out there on our virtual world that weren't able to be here today with us. Again, we're hoping soon we'll be able to do more of these gatherings in person. So, Governor, as I woke up this morning and I looked at the frost on the windshield out here, a few of us had the privilege to stay here last night, I thought, this is Mother Nature's way of showing us with this weather, this freezing weather, that it's not too late to combat global warming if we start now and we work hard. And so Earth Day is a great day to talk about the things that we need to continue to do to protect the beautiful world. And Falkland Farms is a great example. I remember the first time that I came here and saw this place, and the thing that just struck me was the absolute vastness. Our Stanton River State Park is several miles that way, and our Difficult Creek Natural Area Preserve is several miles that way, and everything in between is Falkland Farms. And you see the vista behind me is just one small portion of it. It truly is a special place. And Chris and Jason and Melissa and all the DCR staff that are here today, you have my heartfelt thanks for all that you are doing each and every day to help to make the Commonwealth a better place for our future generations. I've had the privilege serving as DCR director for over 7.5 years now, and I got to tell you, this incredible team makes me proud every day. DCR is responsible for a huge number of activities throughout the Commonwealth. You've heard about our Natural Heritage Program and our Natural Area Preserves, our 40 wonderful state parks. DCR is also responsible for administering our Virginia Land Conservation Fund. And Governor, thank you and thank the members of the General Assembly for records amounts of funding that are going to be available to us this year and next for the Virginia Land Conservation Fund. Our Soil and Water Conservation Division, working with our 47 soil and water conservation districts around the world, we're providing unprecedented amount of funding to assist farmers in employing best management practices to protect our waters and protect our soils. Our Planning and Recreation Resources Division, which also manages the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund here in Virginia, in addition to providing planning and technical assistance to our local governments for their parks. I also want to mention our partner, the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, that's such a critical part of our land conservation efforts. So it's very fitting that we're here today on Earth Day at this beautiful place. And I am very honored now to introduce my boss, the Honorable Matthew J. Strickler, our Virginia Secretary of Natural and soon-to-be Historic Resources. Secretary Strickler.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you, Clyde, for that kind introduction. Working with you and your teams at state parks and natural heritage has been one of the highlights of my time on this job. We have made some great strides together in protecting biological diversity, providing additional outdoor recreation opportunities, and creating a new paradigm for land conservation in the Commonwealth with the groundbreaking Conserve Virginia model. I remember when Jason Bullock and his staff came to brief Governor Northam on the Conserve Virginia initiative a couple of years ago, and there were a couple of things that were really remarkable about that meeting. The first is how impressive Jason and the Heritage team are with their mastery of conservation biology and GIS technology and the like. The other is how amazing it is to have a governor who is willing and able to understand and appreciate both the policy and the science behind something that complicated. It really is good to have a doctor in the house, and Virginia is very lucky for that in more ways than one, especially over the last year with the coronavirus pandemic. Today's Earth Day announcement builds on the governor's unparalleled environmental record and is a perfect example of the conservation value we are striving to achieve. And to make that announcement, I'm pleased to introduce the 73rd Governor of Virginia, His Excellency Ralph Northam.
Thank you.
I really hope that wasn't.
Wow, what a welcome. And happy Earth Day to you as well. But good afternoon, and Secretary Strickler, I appreciate the kind introduction, and to all of you folks that are here today to share this exciting announcement. Thank you. This is definitely a collaborative effort, and I know a lot of folks have been thanked, but Matt, for your leadership and to really be the mastermind behind Conserve Virginia and have that vision and really do all the wonderful work that you've done for natural resources. Thank you on behalf of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Melissa, it's always good to see you, and I will be brief, I promise you, with my comments, but I appreciated your words. But more importantly, I think I appreciate it when you stood up here, the wind went from about 30 miles an hour down to 5. So anytime you want to speak, you're welcome to do that. Clyde, what can I say? We were just in Gloucester a few days ago to cut the ribbon on our 40th beautiful state park in this Commonwealth. And so Clyde, to you and all of your staff, thank you so much for your leadership. We're also honored, as you all know, to be joined by Halifax County Administrator Scott Simpson. Thank you, Halifax Town Manager Carl Espy and South Boston Town Manager Thomas Robb. So, as I said, it takes a village, and we have a wonderful village that have made part these wonderful announcements. And finally, welcome to all of you who are watching the live stream. I suspect you're in a warmer place today, but I hope that we can be together soon, and I certainly think that we can. Again, I want to wish everybody a happy Earth Day. Since 1970, people around the world have celebrated Earth Day every year to demonstrate how important our environment is and how vital it is that we all protect it. The first Earth Day was organized to highlight the negative impacts of water pollution, wildlife habitat destruction, and toxic chemicals. And while Earth Day has helped to galvanize attention towards environmental concerns, there is still much to be done. While we have reduced toxic chemical pollution, a whole host of new environmental challenges have emerged. Our administration is working hard to address these challenges. The past several years have been transformational for Virginia's environmental policies. We've made major strides to clean up Virginia's waterways and the Chesapeake Bay, which, as probably you all know, was my backyard when I grew up. We have taken dramatic steps to address the climate crisis. We have protected habitats, ecosystems, and public lands for the benefit of all Virginians. And we continue to ensure meaningful and transparent public engagement and to consider environmental justice concerns as we shape policy. Today, we celebrate Earth Day in Virginia with an exciting conservation announcement. Thanks to the generosity of Mr. Tim Sweeney, this beautiful place, Falkland Farms, will become property of the Commonwealth of Virginia. This tremendous gift of 7,300 acres, and I will repeat that, 7,300 acres, represents the largest ever donation of private land to the Commonwealth for conservation purposes. The property will be owned and managed by the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation and managed as the first ever joint natural heritage and state parks project. It will be called the Southside Virginia Conservation and Recreation Complex. When connected to Difficult Creek Natural Area Preserve and Stanton River State Park, this will become the largest DCR-owned conserved land in Virginia. It will benefit Halifax County, the South Side, and the Commonwealth for generations to come. This project will give us the opportunity to restore natural habitats at an unprecedented scale and support the local economy by meeting growing demands for recreational trails and water access. It will also continue to protect and conserve Piedmont forest habitat, savannas, and waterways, including two adjacent state scenic rivers, the Dan and the Bannister. And at over 10,000 total acres, this new complex is larger than any of Virginia's existing state parks. As we have learned over the years, quality can matter as much as size with regard to land conservation. That's why we developed Conserve Virginia, a smart map that identifies priority lands for conservation. What's most important about Conserve Virginia is that it identifies important conservation outcomes and will help ensure that we are using limited resources wisely. We've applied that standard to all of our land acquisitions in recent years to ensure that the lands the Commonwealth conserves give the greatest benefit for all Virginians. Falkland Farms is an exceptional place that is clearly the kind of priority land we want to conserve. By setting it aside for conservation, we protect the natural habitat and ecosystem, increase floodplain resilience, and preserve scenic views. We know that protecting nature and wild places is one of the best ways to secure our planet's future. That's why I cannot think of a better way to benefit Virginia and to celebrate Earth Day than to accept this exceptional gift on behalf of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you again, and happy Earth Day.
Thank you very much, Governor. And you've got fans over here. Wow, what an amazing announcement, Governor. That's such exciting news. And now we have to roll our sleeves up and get busy. We have a huge task ahead of us to work with the local governments. One of our next steps will be embarking on a master planning process for this beautiful property. You've already heard from Chris and Jason about some of the techniques that we'll employ to ensure the natural resources are protected on this property. But likewise, this will enable us to take, we have one of the best equestrian facilities at Stanton River State Park in the Commonwealth State Park system. And this property will allow us to expand on all sorts of opportunities to equestrian, mountain bikers, hikers, bird watchers, animal lovers of all type. What a better way to celebrate Earth Day than with this awesome announcement. So, Governor, thank you so much for being here and being part of this great event. And with that, we will conclude our program. And I hope that you all have a fantastic Earth Day.
Thank you, Clyde.